Welcome to a new episode of In Peace Stories. Our story today will take us to Burundi, specifically in 1998-1999. It was one of my first trips to conduct research and evaluation of peace-building programs. As we know that there was an ethnic war that took place in Burundi and Rwanda in 1994. 200,000 people died in Burundi, 800,000 people died in Rwanda. So 3-4 years after, there were several peace-building projects in place, and my task was to go with a colleague of mine from the United States to conduct evaluation of one of those programs. So as we do in many of those research projects, we have to develop or create a team of researchers, mainly made of people from that country that we are going to do the research on. So we composed a team of 10 people, 5 men, 5 women, 5 Hutus, 5 Tutsis, which are the two ethnic groups that were fighting each other during the ethnic war, in order to make sure that we are representing everyone that has something to do with the peace-building program. And 10 people were excellent, and they gave us a great input in the development and design of our research and evaluation methods and content and questions, and everything was going very, very well. One day we were working on designing a survey that we would do in the villages and in the cities with a random sample of people from Burundi. And in designing the survey, our objective was to try to understand to what extent the project was effective in changing things for people. And in doing this, we need to compare different groups of people to see if the project had the same impact on everybody or the impact was different. For example, we have to make sure our sample includes sufficient number of men and women. And if we find that the responses of men and women are different from each other, then this is something that we need to focus on and to understand. We hope to see that the project is actually affecting everybody in the same way. Same thing with age groups. We want to make sure that all age groups are benefiting the same way or not, and why. And also based on education and many other variables. One important variable, of course, for us was the variable of ethnicity, whether you are Hutu or Tutsi. So as we were designing the survey, everything is going very well. We asked the 10 people that we will have to include a question about, are you Hutu or Tutsi? So they said, no, you cannot ask a question like this. We said, but this is a must. I mean, that's one of the most critical questions in this research. Is the program affecting Hutus and Tutsis at the same level or not? Because if the project is, for example, benefiting one group more than the other, this is a serious problem, and we'll have to inform the people working on the project. They said, no, this is a sensitive question. People were getting killed because they were Hutu or Tutsi. You cannot just walk on the streets and say, are you Hutu, are you Tutsi? We are not going to do this. And the more we pressed, my colleague and I, to try to convince them of why we need to ask the question, the more they were becoming stubborn, upset, and angry with us and with each other. It became such a tense situation in the room that we had to call for a break, and I discussed with my colleague. And I suggested to him that maybe we need to find a proxy question. Maybe we shouldn't ask directly if you are Hutu or Tutsi. I know in many other societies, you can tell somebody's identity on a certain level by asking, for example, what village or city they are from, or what is their name in some places. So I suggested that maybe we can explore something like this. So we went back to the room and we said, okay, we are not going to ask the question of Hutu or Tutsi, but do you have an alternative? Do you have another variable that can indicate if someone is Hutu or Tutsi? They said, yes, ask where they come from, where their hometown. And that likely will indicate to us if they were Hutu or Tutsi. We said, that's great, that's good enough. And we actually designed the survey in this way, and then later we coded every town and city where somebody came from, and that gave us an indication if they were Hutu or Tutsi. And that helped very much with completing the research. 3 years after, I went back to Burundi to do a longitudinal research and evaluation of the same project. And I convened another group of 10 people, different 10 people. Again, 5 men, 5 women, 5 Hutus, 5 Tutsis. And we were doing very well, designing the research questions. Everything is going very well. And until we came to the question of Hutu and Tutsi, and I shared with them what happened the year in 1998, and that we, instead of asking if you are Hutu or Tutsi, we asked what is your hometown. And I said, is this going to be okay now? They said, no, why do you have to do this? Just ask if they are Hutu or Tutsi. I said, what? 3 years ago, we had a war in this room because of that very question of are you Hutu or Tutsi? And the 10 people we hired refused that we even come near asking a question like this. 3 years after, you are saying that that's okay and we can ask such a question? They said yes, because all the peace efforts that are made by the government, media, education for the last 3 years were all about asserting the identity of everyone and for everyone to be proud of who they are as Hutu or Tutsi, at the same time to be proud of how they can connect with everyone else in a peaceful way and to have peaceful coexistence and social cohesion. But asserting this ethnic identity was the heart and the key of the peace building programs for the last 3 years. And therefore, it is no longer a taboo. It is no longer something to be afraid of to say, I am Hutu or I am Tutsi. I was really surprised by this. And of course, we conducted the research in this way. Everything went very well. But I have to say that I knew very well also that across the border in Rwanda, there was a whole different approach to dealing with the question of the conflict over identity and ethnicity. They took more of the approach of asserting the supranationality, national identity of being Rwandan, and you wouldn't at all speak about the issue of Hutu or Tutsi or highlight the identity of Hutu or Tutsi. Everything is about we are all Rwandans, we all are citizens, and we all have the same responsibilities and rights as citizens. But the question of Hutu or Tutsi is relegated to a whole different lower level. This is a very different approach from what they did in Burundi. I am not saying one approach is better than the other. I am saying that there are different approaches, and it's good for us as researchers in peace and peace building and peacemaking is to appreciate that there are different ways of dealing with conflicts of identity. There is not one right way of doing things. But when we design our models of research and evaluation, we need to be aware what approaches are taken in a certain context, understand why they are doing it this way, and see what impact it may have. That is definitely one of the big lessons that came out of this research we conducted. Another lesson, of course, is about conflict sensitivity. What happened in the 1998 when we were insisting on asking the question of Hutu and Tutsi, and the researchers from Burundi were getting upset about it, was an indication that we were not doing a good job in being sensitive about what's important for people. And we must make sure that we do no harm when we are working on research in peace building, such as the one we were doing. We must make sure that we are sensitive to people, listen to people, understand what is important for them, and make your research something that will advance peace rather than to create trouble for them. And the final lesson is things change. Just because we learned in 1998 that the question of Hutu and Tutsi was sensitive and you don't want to ask that question, it was not something that was constant and will stay always. When we came back 3 years after, it was a surprise. But I would say the lesson was you got to always update your research. Assessments of conflict cannot stop at one point and we say, that's it, we figured it all out. Things change. So continuously do assessments and continuously understand what's happening on the ground and accordingly adjust your programs and adjust your research. I hope you found this story useful, and until new stories in peace. Amr.